So this was a video I was planning over the last few days. I'd seen the original upload by Resisting the Lies with the title Dueling the E9 Contributes to Climate Change. Now, you'll notice with certain individuals in the Scottish Parliament, the very first words out their mouth are, by and large, and under fair use, the following.
And Burgess, up to 4 minutes, Ms Burgess.
Presiding Officer, as a nation, we face an urgent climate crisis that demands bold action.
Bold action always translates as, your life is going to get oh so much worse. Because we're all in this together as global citizens, and we are fighting this invisible enemy that, well, actually we have a lot to do with it. If you were to type in even, I'd try Google this time, trees cut down in Scotland. The current total figure we have for trees which have been felled as part of a consented, that's all in the wording there, wind farm development since the year 2000 is 17 million. Guess what? Trees absorb a huge amount of. And what do they respire? Oxygen. Guess what we need? Yeah? But anyway, where were we?
The transport sector in Scotland is Scotland's most significant contributor to climate change.
Actually, no, I would argue you fuckers are. 17 million trees to put up a technology that is how many hundreds of years old and is only semi-effective. Yeah? And then think about, I don't know, if you were to type in bird losses, wind farms. Eagles, for example, deaths, wind farms alone. You clubbed an eagle to death, quite rightly, you've got a hefty fine and jail time. Wind farm, well, you know. You gotta break a few eggs. Anyway, where were we with this aging hippie?
Responsible for over a quarter of our greenhouse gas emissions. Despite this, we have made little progress in reducing those emissions over the past 30 years. Our current approach to transport...
Oh wait, I know, we've done lots to curb emissions. Oh, think about all these particulate filters, better fuel, more refined engines, ECUs, blah blah blah, you name it. I mean, phenomenal changes as regards the emissions out of cars. Yeah? 90s, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I would absolutely, up until that point, agree with you. After that, massive changes, huge changes. Remember, how many decades did they stop having steam coal in city centres, and they went for anthracite, smokeless coal, all the rest of it? Yeah, I get all that, but come on. There's not even performance cars out there these days that can have actually a decent exhaust note because of so many filters. Yeah? Oh, where were we?
Transportation is not sustainable and requires...
Transportation is not sustainable. Think about that. Seriously.
a fundamental shift. As an MS...
Well, you know, goes back to Marilyn Ferguson's Aquarian Conspiracy, Personal Social Transformation in the 1980s, now rebranded as in our modern era, blah, 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 whatever. And of course, one of the most quoted phrases in there is paradigm shift. Paradigm shift. In fact, you'd be hard-pushed to find a book out there in the English language that says that phrase as many times as that book, which they see as a New Age Bible.
For the Highlands and Islands, it is absolutely clear to me that a well-maintained road network is vital for our economy and our communities. In some parts of my region, these roads, like the Rest and Be Thankful, are lifeline roads that provide the only practical way in and out of Argyll.
Funny she should mention that, because there used to be this thing called, I don't know, the old A82. So the A82, and up until some point in the 80s, you honestly was literally like rock on one side and lockside on the other. Seriously. Then they made dual carriageways, which reduced accidents phenomenally and reduced the time it took to get from A to B. And people were in a higher gear more of the time because, well, straight roads. Yeah? None of it rocket science. Funny she should mention that. But
our infrastructure investment needs to be bolder and more ambitious than road upgrades.
Funny she should mention Boulder, because that's another thing with, what does she call it? Rest and Be Thankful. Seems to have had a problem with boulders for the last few years because they've never truly fixed what they should have done the first time round. And every time that that road to Rest and Be Thankful would shut down, sometimes they had it shut down for quite literally weeks, adding 80 miles an hour, 80 miles on top of a journey time, length of a journey, blah, blah, blah. And of course, social engineering on steroids, think tanks behind the scenes, all the rest of it, blah, 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 and getting used to, what should be seen as unacceptable. But
expansions. Too often, our transport plans seem to start and end with road upgrades and expansions rather than looking at all the transport options that we need to invest in, from buses to bikes, rail and ferry.
And that's another thing when it comes to rail. Scotland used to have an absolutely phenomenal rail network. If you look at, funnily enough, at places like Argyll, you'll find many areas where there's like rail, but that was all shut down like so many other places in Scotland. The solutions were actually decades ago. They truly were. But the last thing they wanted was, well, where it was going, i.e. good routes that had lasted decades through train, buses, cars, all the rest of it. And it's now about, well, the 15-minute cities and the 20-minute neighbourhoods. That's what it's about. Seriously, if you look at old Scottish railway lines, many of them, and it's not just exclusively to Scotland. If you look in England, there was many rail networks that were shut down, and apparently it was because it was cheaper to have buses and certain cars and all the rest of it. They play people constantly from decade to decade, and here we are.
The Scottish Government has committed to reducing car kilometres by 20% by 2030, a target that aligns with our legally binding climate commitments. However,
legally binding climate commitments. In other words, your input is not required. You can pretend to fucking vote for us and you can fill our coffers, but our obligation lies elsewhere. Not to you and I.
Proposed road upgrades and expansions, such as the full dualling of the A9 and the A96, directly contradict this. Building more and bigger roads will only encourage increased car usage.
Now, let me go back to how she mentioned Rest and Be Thankful. I can assure you, up until, I think it was about the mid-80s, the road width heading up to Rest and Be Thankful was not nice. Not nice at all. And honestly, quite literally, rock on one side and basically the lock on the other. Yeah? And that was changed for good reason. The dualling, the dual carriageways, all the rest of it made such a phenomenal difference. Both when you look at it and reflect, emissions, safety, health, so many things. It was so beneficial to Argyll in general. Yeah. The witchcraft of this. And yeah, absolutely, I can do a better job.
Generate more greenhouse gas emissions and undermine our efforts to combat.
Oh wait, let's go back to, well, because of wind farms. 17 million trees cut down in Scotland so far.
Climate change.
It is witchcraft you're dealing with. The witchcraft of words and short attention spans and certainly memories as well. And I'll speak to you soon.